Welcome to the Gray Area. The Gray Area Media. We've obligated ourselves to be the voice for all communities, speaking on topics that include community, religion, education, politics, technology, sports, health, and wellness. The Gray Area Media is a platform created by longtime friends for the sole purpose of providing our communities with the ability to voice current, past, and modern-day issues. The Gray Area, in its naming significance, solely speaks to the area in which people shy away from speaking because of media-based constraints or contractual-based obligations. Well, I'm here to tell you, we don't do that here. So please, stay tuned in. We're going to go live in a few minutes. Don't forget, please add us as a friend on Facebook so that you can follow our live feed. And not only that, please add us on Twitter and Instagram at The Gray Area Media. Please visit our website at www.thegrayareamedialive.com. Thank you. Hello, viewers. We are live right now. This is The Gray Area, and this is your boy, Ray Eden.
This is your boy, P. Wills. What's happening?
We have some very special guests for you guys today. Mr. Kenneth Allen, Commissioner.
Welcome. Thank you
Yes,
for having
sir.
me.
Well, we're glad to have you here.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner on the Indiana Commission on the Social Status of Black Males.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Absolutely. We'll go into what that means, what it is, and what you guys are doing with that program, with that organization. And my man Kirk Bates here.
Hey, what's going on, man?
Yeah.
What's going on, Kurt?
Kirk is sitting in as a guy that's very knowledgeable, has been through several situations and things, and is concerned for the black male today, and he's going to dig in deep and give us some discussion surrounding how we think it all started and some solutions, and also on what's happening today in regards to the black males. So, Kenneth, tell us more about this organization that you're a commissioner of, because frankly, a lot of people, and including myself, had not heard of you or the organization until we were pulling you on the show, and it was a reference, and we said we got to get this guy on the show. Yeah. So and we're doing this so that people can be aware and know what's happening around them. We just don't. We're on social media, but we're not going to Indiana.gov and looking for this kind of stuff. We're not on political figure pages, and we just can't find this stuff. So tell us what the organization is and what you guys are doing.
Absolutely. Again, thank you for having me. It is such an honor and privilege to be here to support what you guys are doing.
Yeah,
you guys are doing some phenomenal work, and I appreciate this medium to be able to share
the
great work of the Indiana Commission on the Social Status of Black Males. The Indiana Commission on the Social Status of Black Males was started in 1991. The Indiana General Assembly at that time formed an interim study committee to really study the condition of African American males. At that time, as is now, we were at the top of all the bad statistics. So legislators, particularly State Representative Dr. Vernon G. Smith out of Gary, wrote some legislation to get the General Assembly to write a study committee. And out of that study committee, they found some horrific statistics on African American males, that we were at the health, education, criminal justice.
Right.
We were at the bottom of all of those statistics, and that was alarming.
Right.
So the Indiana General Assembly passed a law to actually form the Indiana Commission on the Social Status of Black Males to look at the areas of African American males in 5 different focus areas: health, education, criminal justice, social factors, and really provide an annual report to the Indiana General Assembly every year in those areas. And so the commission has one purpose by statute, and that is to provide a report to both the Indiana House of Representatives and the Indiana Senate on the condition of African American males. And with that report, it is our responsibility to make recommendations to the Indiana General Assembly on policy that can obviously affect African American Hoosiers from all over the state of Indiana. And sometimes people hear black males, they automatically think young, but we advocate for black males, whether they're 0 or whether they're 100. What policies can we make, or what policies can we tweak that are going to be in the best interest of African American males?
Wow. So what factors do you think attribute to those negative or bad statistics?
Well, I mean, there is no one thing that I think contributes. I think there's several things. I think it's a systematic system that's in place. It is a broken system that does need to be repaired, which is why this commission exists to really analyze those laws
Sure.
that are being passed, that to make sure
Okay.
that when they are passing laws, that they are considerate
Right.
of the African American male. Even though the one thing that we're required to do by law is the annual report, we do a couple of different things. For example, every year for the last 3 years in the month of February, we've put together what we call the Young Black Males Matter Day, where this past February, we had African American males from all across the state of Indiana, probably our largest ever, about 300 African American males, came down to the legislature to understand the legislative process and how important it is and how that, they make policies every day that affect them. And people say, I don't get into all that politics stuff.
Right,
I
right.
put it like this. When you were born in the state of Indiana, you're not officially born until the health commissioner says you're born. And that's either an elected or appointed official.
Right.
If we were to die right now today, right this moment, we wouldn't be dead till the county coroner comes in and says, okay, it's official,
Right.
he's dead, and signs his name. And
Right.
the county coroner in most counties is an elected or appointed official. So everything from birth to death is all politics. And so when you understand that people every day when the General Assembly is in session are writing laws, you need to have advocates. You need to have somebody that's there making sure that your best interest at heart. So we put that together to expose young people
Right.
that, they can be the next legislators. They can advocate. They can lobby for the things that are important to them, whether it's a playground, whether that's, better water, whatever that case is, whatever issues that are affecting them, they have a voice at the state capitol. In addition to that, we also do the month of April, we do what we call the Black Barbershop Health Initiative.
Okay.
During one of our annual reports that we provide to the General Assembly, we saw that African American males, the statistics were just horrible. So he said, what can we do differently? How can we change this? And so we know that African American males have a problem going to the doctor. And if they're single, they really have a problem going to the doctor. And so we said, let's bring the medical resources to them. So we start going to the barbershops all across the state of Indiana, where we have a high concentration of African American males
Yeah.
providing free health services,
Nice.
as well as testing. And then we take it a step further. Not only do we test them, but we follow back up with them. Hey, 6 months, your blood pressure was kind of high. Did you utilize your health insurance? Did you
Right.
utilize the
Right.
free resources that we provided?
Right.
And so we've been very successful with that all over the state of Indiana during the month of April. And then obviously our annual conference, which is coming up in October, where we bring together policymakers, those that have direct care or serve African American males. We give them opportunity to exchange ideas, provide them empowerment and resources to be better to serve African American males.
Wow. Man,
It's
I mean,
fascinating.
and it's
It's a
just
look.
amazing to know that there's an organization out there that cares and does that. I mean, like I said, most people like myself have no idea you guys exist.
Yeah, and we're one of the very
Same
few
here,
states
yeah.
that still has, back during this time, a lot of the states formed what we call these Commission on Black Males. And it was kind of during the Rodney King time. And a lot of states, we have to do something. But now I can say that we're probably one of the strongest and one of the last longing states that actually has a commission, which shout
Wow.
out to our state that they would still
sure.
see that this is still an important issue here in
Absolutely.
2017.
Absolutely, because this. I mean, they could just as easily say we don't need this.
Absolutely.
So that's amazing. And, I mean, and so there's so many things. Like we've had, people on that are advocates for black businesses. You guys are advocating for us. In between legislator and the Black Caucus and all these things that we don't know about.
Yeah.
I'm just so amazed that these things exist, and I'm even more happy that the viewers have a chance to know that hey, there's people out here advocating for you, and not only
Absolutely.
medically, but from a business perspective, socially, and all that. So, Kirk, we had some prior discussion, in regards to this, and let's go back to what the problem is. You feel like the root of why we are here today,
In the
why-
situation
the
that-
fact that we even have to have a report. What is it? How did we get here?
My humble feeling. Thanks for having me here tonight.
No problem.
I appreciate it.
Welcome.
Doc, Scott, I really appreciate you weighing in on the situation the way you are. But I think a lot of our issues come from just basic disenfranchisement that takes us clearly back to that how we got here.
Right.
Our head was separated from the body, where the head was not to be used, but the body was.
Right.
Okay.
Well, some kind of way we have to connect the head and the body. We're having a lot of issues with that particular situation, and that equal opportunity, as we hear it and say it, is not necessarily equal opportunity. There's too much of a disparity in who's ahead and who's behind, and we seem to always be behind. So we will never, we cannot accomplish the level of competition in the way that we see it in today's world. We've got spots and places where we excel. A lot of the invention of this country was founded by the African American, and it's not recognized. It's not in our school systems. I don't want to be negative here.
Right. Right.
What I'm trying to do is bring in
Inform.
the idea of how we got here,
Right.
and what we need to do to correct it.
Right.
As we were talking earlier, the reference was made is if you want to hide something from a black male, put it in a book.
Right.
And there's vast numbers of knowledge, as I did not know about your commission until I got here, that I'm not aware of. But that forum is for the young man who's coming along without a sense of focus and purpose. And the idea of behind health and so forth, for me, is important as it would be to a young man. So for me, that commission serves me as well. But my thing is that as the energy of change comes from the youth, we're not stepping back into the youthful forums to allow them where their powers are. And they start with an understanding of self and preservation and respect for one another. And we're not respecting one another, and it comes down to doing things in spite of instead of because of. Because of is easy. In spite of makes you grow. When we hear the stories on TV of how we are dying in the streets, and the newspaper prints it was over 50 cents or a chicken leg, it wasn't over that. It was over the base foundation of self-preservation and respect.
Right.
And we're not teaching each other how to self-preservate and respect. And a lot of that comes a lot of times with walking away, agreeing to disagree. And we don't do that very well.
Right. It's a pride thing.
Yeah.
You know, I'm right, you wrong, and if you say I'm wrong, we got a problem.
And there lies the problem.
Right.
We got to get to the foundational understanding of respect. There was a time when as I grew up, that there was a fleeing felony that you could not shoot a man in the back. When did that change? I don't know. But in recent times, Black Lives Matter and so forth has shown us that rule some kind of way is not even being mentioned in any form at all. Well, that comes again from the idea of hiding something in a book or just not mentioning it.
Right.
You couldn't shoot someone in your home and shoot them in the back without having a recourse. A lot of this comes from fear. I commend and uplift all that we're fighting for as Black Lives Matter, but that's not the real matter. The matter for me is that the idea is all this is something that's avoidable. If we respect ourselves first, others will respect us as well.
Right. Right.
Do you think
Good
part?
point.
Do you think part of the problem and why, I'll touch on the youth, is that the youth have been groomed to be dependent, in the political parties that they vote for, just dependent. Period. Because you touched on how basically that, the youth are just, just dependent.
Let me reach back to you for a little bit. I'm a last year baby boomer, 1964.
Okay.
The first year of the baby boomer is 1946. I have a brother that's 1946. The idea is that I grew up in a household of the same mantra, the same genre, the same spectrum, the same prism of learning and growing up. As we've gotten older, I grew up in a time where the grocery store was closed at 9 on Saturday night. The pharmacy was closed on Sunday. In the innovation of life in itself, things have changed. Along with those changes, people are working more. When I was growing up, my mother was at home at 5 o'clock in the evening. When today's child grows up, the mother's not home. The father is obviously absent in a lot of situations. So the child is growing is teaching themselves. They're not teaching themselves. They're given mediums and medias that teach them. They have to learn it from someplace.
Right.
Back when I was growing up, there was a group called Crisscross. And Crisscross used to wear their pants backwards.
Right.
It was cool. That was for them, not for our social system.
Right.
But it was allowed to be injected into the system to identify us as not growing. When as we are today, and we're getting away from it, thank goodness, is the idea of sagging breeches.
Right.
It was supposed to be your pants was pulled up and your belt on. There's
Right.
a reason for it. Well, the idea is that it was something that was accepted as something that's okay because it was on television.
Right.
All of those things are for entertainment purposes only.
Right.
We have a real crisis and a real situation that none of the TV represents.
Right.
And so
Solely entertainment.
the first thing is that I grew up in a household where someone was at home to watch me grow and to stop me from getting involved in things that were not appropriate. Today's society, we just seem to have lost focus that it starts in that foundation at home. But something has made that complicated. A way of life for your children. People are not home now. So I brought up the notion of grocery stores and pharmacies not being open. Well, now everything's open 24 hours.
Right.
With the influx of people needing to work and not having a way to get to the most important commodity in their lives, and that's their children.
Right.
And if they're not at home with their kids, what's raising them?
Right.
Well, soon enough, that kid becomes a grown person that thinks they know. And if their parents don't tell them, there's no way for anybody else to think that they can.
Right. Right. And we spoke on that, how young men, and young women too, are raising themselves, raising their siblings, putting grown people situations. I can imagine, and I grew up in that way, having my son raise his siblings, I'm saying, at his age, but kids are being forced to do that. They go to school with grown people problems. I got to make sure, my brother and sisters eat before I get there, but what we going to eat? So now you're trying to teach this kid education, tell him the things that are important for him, and on the top of his head is what we going to eat.
Exactly.
So we're faced with a lot of different situations, that become traumatic as we grow up and become men. So naturally, we're stripped of childhood. We're put into an educational system that doesn't understand the stress that comes with being at home. Whether it's a single parent home or whether some people have two parents that are still equally busy, or don't give them what they need, because their parents didn't know. So even two-parent homes are suffering.
Absolutely.
So there's definitely a disconnect on how we should parent our kids and the things that they need. The one thing that I realize about other races and other societies is that they build their framework around making sure the kids can thrive. We don't do that. We look at things like, well, we got to eat. Well, we got to pay the rent. Well, we got to do these things. And naturally, because there's a lot of single-parent homes, that is the only option. So it's great to have foundations and organizations that help uplift that, but we have to learn how to remove ourselves from that. Democrats have been able to assist in giving us things too long, and not knocking Democrats, because, there's some things needed in that spectrum. There are people who simply need the system to get ahead temporarily, but not for a lifetime, and that's why there's some things that I agree with on both spectrums, whether it be Republican or Democrat, but the problem is that our society believes that we are a Democratic body when we're really both. We're really a little bit of both.
Yeah, we've been groomed to vote to be dependent. Just don't dream. Just settle and just be dependent on what you were given. My perspective on politics has totally changed. The more money you make, and when you start having kids and you deal with certain things, in life, you look at things differently. And that's one thing that I've been looking at. And, I've had conversations with Ray. about like I don't want my sons to be dependent on me. My job as a father is to groom them to be independent. To be able to, grow and then have a family, later on, and then teach their kids, this, the exact same thing. Focus on their credit. Focus on, building wealth.
Economics, financial
Yeah.
stability.
And,
Yeah.
and to be honest, that's kind of how I got in this fight. I grew up in a single parent home in Gary, Indiana.
For sure.
And my mother couldn't always afford the things that
Yeah.
I wanted. So I said, what can I do? So one time I tried to cut grass. My granddaddy wouldn't let me use his lawnmower. He felt like I wasn't, strong enough to
Right,
do it. So
right.
I finally convinced my mother to kind of give me advance on my allowance. And so I took that, bought some candy retail because I didn't know anything about wholesale at that time. Sold it to my friends, became very good at it, so much so that there was a mentoring program started in Gary, Indiana by the same guy that authored this legislation, Representative
Wow.
Smith. And you had to be in high school to participate in the entrepreneurship program. Well, I was in middle school, so I couldn't get into it. So what I did was volunteer my time to learn every aspect of the business and actually convince my grandfather to open up a candy store.
Sweat equity.
Open up a candy store in his garage. And I
Right.
did that, man, from the time I was 12 to the time I was 16. When I closed it, it was 79. It was ranked 79 in the top 100 youth businesses in the country at that
Wow.
time. And so, our parents' generation, they fought civil rights. This new fight is civil rights. We have to be able to have the economic power to be able to change the direction
Absolutely.
of our people. In addition to that, as you look at politics, when you think about, you take a city like Indianapolis, there are, to my knowledge, no Asians on the city county council, but Asians have a market of businesses all across the city council. There are no full-blown Hispanics on the council that I'm aware of. I know there are some that maybe have some mixed
Sure.
blood in them, but there are no, full-blown, but they still have areas in Indianapolis where they have economic empowerment.
Absolutely.
If you were to ask a citizen of Indianapolis, where's the black area? Where's the China? Where's the black town? It doesn't exist. But
Right.
we have the Commission on Black Males. We have the Black Caucus. We have positions
Right.
on the city council, but we don't have that economic power.
Right. Absolutely.
Well, blocked into all of those, the reason why I feel like that you don't see the black empowerment, because we've all blocked it in together into one word: minority. So the idea is, when it's a minority, our process as being the original minority, or that labeling where it came from, is now diluted. Those businesses that you see do have something in common, and it still takes me back to the idea of the head being attached to the body. Those communities support one another. This is not basic knowledge that's not understood, but our dollar does not turn among ourselves well enough for us to understand that that's where our empowerment lies. It's not so much a thing about someone not wanting to do business, but we don't give ourselves, for those who are in business, enough opportunities to create more. Immediately, we're ready to say this plumber, who is my own ethnic origin, did not do the job right, and call it, because he is that ethnic origin, is the reason why it wasn't successful. That's not it at all. When the other origins of people do it, then they call another. They keep calling until someone does it right. Well, we should be trying to do the same thing, if it means giving that person another opportunity
Right.
sometime to
Right.
do it right. Give him that chance to do so. So when we're speaking in terms of our own economic empowerment, the problem we have is we're ready to quickly take the choices to something else, as opposed to sticking with what we can potentially do to help us as a group, as opposed to an individual.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
You all have my good friend on here, Minister Nuri Muhammad.
Yes,
He's
sir.
actually
Yes,
our
sir.
keynote speaker for the conference
Shout out
this
to
year.
Nuri.
Shout out
So
to Nuri.
we're
Nuri.
excited about them. But he has a phrase that he says, shop with your brother before you shop with another. And I live by that,
Right.
Even
Right.
if it means you have to drive a little bit further, even
Yeah.
if it means you have to pay a little bit more,
Absolutely.
you understand the value of supporting each other. Because if we don't support each other, and if we don't teach folks how to support each other. It
Right.
won't happen, and that's why I'm
Right.
excited too about our conference, because we really empower folks to say, hey, these are the issues, these are some of the solutions that can get us out. And I think too often when we look at conferences like this, we think that it's just a coming together. We all come together and go home and do nothing, and that's not the way this
Right.
conference is set up. This is
Right.
a solution-oriented conference for those that are
Good.
coming.
Very good.
And more importantly, it's free.
Right. That's the important part.
So go out and support.
First
please.
time in 17 years that we've ever made it free too.
Wow. Man, and that's so important. I mean, just again, just the fact that you guys exist and are taking on that thing. Let's talk about some of the reports. I mean, because we really, and our viewers and everybody should understand the most important part of these reports and how you guys get them and what are some of the major problems that are being focused on.
So when the commission was originally set up, they put at the table everybody that they felt was necessary to be able to kind of resolve and provide some input on these ideas. So the commission is made up of 2 members of the Senate who are not members of the same political party, appointed by the President pro temp of the Senate with the advice of the minority leader of the Senate. 2 members of the House of Representatives who are not members of the same political party, appointed by the Speaker of the House of Representatives with the advice from the minority
That gives
leader.
you a Democrat and a Republican or an independent, two.
Correct.
Yeah,
Correct. The director of the Division of Family Resources, the director of Mental Health and Addiction, the commissioner's State Department of Health, the superintendent of Public Instruction, and the Department of Correction, as well as the Civil Rights Commission director. The Indiana Department of Administration has a spot on the commission. A minority business person, the lieutenant governor has a spot, and then the Senate President pro tem has the opportunity, as well as the Speaker of the House have the opportunity to appoint 3 community people to the commission, in addition to the legislators.
Are those people already selected?
Correct. Yeah,
Who do you guys have from the community?
So I am one of
Okay.
the speakers representatives on the commission.
Okay.
I'm not a state employee.
Okay.
All the majority of the folks that are on the commission are state employees
Okay.
over those agencies or the proxy for those agencies.
Okay.
And so I don't have everybody's name
Okay.
in front of me,
Sure.
but it is listed on our website.
That's awesome.
All the commissioners.
Okay. And which you can go to, that website is
www.in.gov/ICSSBM.
Yep. Okay. So make sure you guys look that up.
And so, back to your
sure,
question about
sure.
the reports, is so we provide a report looking at, what does the Department of Mental Health have to say about African American males? What is the state of our mental health? What does the Superintendent of Public Instruction say? Are black males getting suspended more? And if so, give us some reasons. Give us the data so we can look at that.
Right.
What does the Department of Corrections say about African American males? Are we locking them up at an alarming rate, or is that just something we're saying? So we look at we ask each of those divisions to provide us the data so that we can actually put it together in a report
Right.
and provide some policy around that and provide that to the General Assembly.
Man, that's big. So
It is.
when
Extremely big.
When you say they give you the reports, or they give you the data that's necessary, who are you getting the data from? Is it the police organizations, or is it the legislators who are over those? Who are you getting the data from?
So when you look at the Department of Education, for instance, they're
Okay.
getting the data strictly from the schools.
Okay.
When you look at the mental health division, they're getting their information usually from the hospitals and the Medicare
Gotcha.
providers.
Okay.
When you look at the Department of Correction, they're getting their information from the various jails within,
Right.
within the state of Indiana.
Wow, and that's big. That's huge. And in your experience with these reports, do you see progress? Do you see, like, once they come in, right? You say, okay, this is the data we have. This is what we have. What can we do? What, from your perspective, from your experience on sitting with these groups, what do you see changing? What kind of things do you see happening in regards to those reports?
So we're seeing people's lives literally be changed. When you look at the report, when we realize we have to do something with black males' health. When we start this black male health initiative in the barbershops, it is literally saved lives of African American males in the state of Indiana. So when you say, is it working? Absolutely. Is there a lot more for us to do? Absolutely. When you look at the expungement bill that the commission has been fighting for years that finally got passed, yes, there are things that we've been able to do accomplish, but we have a whole lot of work to do. But it's not just the commission's responsibility. It has to take the whole entire community
Absolutely.
lobbying and advocating and working
Right.
on these issues. We can't do it alone. We only have a staff of one person.
Right,
And, you
right.
know, he has to manage all of these different
Right.
initiatives. And so we have to be able to educate and inform the entire community. And it's not going to just take black males working
Right.
on this issue. It takes
Right.
the entire state to really make a difference and make
Absolutely.
an impact. And so the key is educating folks about what the issues are, why the issues exist, and how they can do things to make our condition better in the state of Indiana. And that's why we're having this conference as well.
Absolutely.
Wow, man.
So,
Powerful.
how do, like, let's just say there's community organizations that are out here fighting to help and assist. How do they get in contact with you guys and partner with you guys in regards to that? Because one thing I heard you mention was that you got one guy or you guys are limited on resources. Because we know so many people that are out in the community, like every day, that are really out there in different pockets around the city. So how do they team up with you? Because to me, you got the keys. I mean, you got the keys because you're sitting with legislators and organizations and doing things that directly affect the health and stability of black males. So how do they get in contact with you and partner up? Is there a process that they have to follow?
Well, us being a state commission, all of our meetings are open to the general public.
Okay.
So we typically meet the third Wednesday of the month at either the State House or the Government Center at
Okay.
10:30. And so those meetings are totally open to the public. We have to post them, so always visit our website to see when our next meeting is.
Okay.
The state conference is a good opportunity for folks to connect with us. Our executive director's name is James Garrett Jr.
Okay.
He can be reached at 317-233-1744. Again, it's 317-233-1744, or he can even be reached by email at jgarrett@icsSBM.in.gov. You can follow us on Facebook at Indiana Commission on the Social Status of Black Males. We're also on Twitter at ICSSBM. So those are different opportunities to reach out
Right.
to us. A lot of times we have to let folks know that we're not really a program-focused commission. A lot of people come to us with program ideas.
Sure.
That's not what we do.
Okay.
We do try to support with the resources we have, and maybe even sponsoring. We're
Right.
also preparing next weekend a host of the King's Fest, which is an awesome
Bloom Project.
They're doing
Absolutely.
a great job. So
Yep.
we've been hosting their event for the last 3 years. Excited about
Shout
that.
Shout
out
out
to
to
Bloom
Bloom
Project.
Project.
Oh yeah,
I
Arnetta
legit all
Scruggs, she's
day.
doing an amazing job.
Absolutely.
And,
Arnetta
we-
Scruggs.
Absolutely. We're very proud of her. She had an opportunity to share with our entire board at our last meeting about that wonderful project. So we're excited about that.
Yep.
And there's opportunities. If we don't have maybe the money to support an organization, we can connect you and maybe even make the phone call or make the email. Because a lot of times these programs out here need access to people or access to money, and we have access. I mean, we have the superintendent of public instruction sits on my commission, the Department of Health, all those different entities. We have legislators, so we're good at connecting the dots
Absolutely.
for those programs and those folks that are actually out there on the boots ground working.
Wow. Man, I mean,
That's
it's,
a lot,
it's,
man.
it's like
A lot of
the more you know.
He's hitting a lot.
Right, because
Yeah, I mean,
like
wow.
we've had almost everybody in here that is trying to do something, but to know that piece is available,
Yeah.
on that level is amazing.
Yeah.
Absolutely, man.
Kirk, you was talking, prior to this, we had some small discussion, and you were talking about some solutions that could help curb the black male social status in today, because I really feel like there's some post-traumatic stress going on with most black males because of what we're faced with, and arguably some people could say, well, just because you black don't mean that we're not going through the same thing. Arguably, there's some who will say, well, I grew up in the hood too. But why is there there's a difference? Can you break in and tell why there's such a difference in racial difference, in regards to the post-traumatic stress and whatnot, and some solutions to that?
I've always found a major component of our growth lies in the ability to mature. And that's a huge factor among black males.
That's interesting.
We find ourselves being led instead of leading because of our inability to mature. Out of not being able to mature, we cannot see ourselves in a leadership role. There's a lot of things that there's a lot to be learned about being a leader. You have to grow to be one, but before you lead, you got to know how to follow.
Right.
So what ends up happening to us a lot of times is that we've got a group of 30 and 40-year-olds that don't realize that they're nothing but followers because they didn't mature.
Right. Right.
So we have a major gap in growing. We watch the wrong things to grow.
Don't have enough examples.
You take
Or
we
they
watch
reject the examples.
We're watching role models who are 21, 22-year-old athletes. Well, I'll give you a scenario of what that athlete looked like just a year before he was a role model. The year before, he was at a college dorm, or in the case of some who come out of high school to become superstars, his bedroom was the size of 15 by 15 feet. The very following year, after signing some type of contract that labels him as a role model and successful, he's able to buy the city block. But out of that, does he have the maturity to lead and control it?
Right.
So many times we watch where he's not able to. That's what's leading us. That's what's allowed to lead us. Instead of promoting the astrophysicist Grassley, or in the sake of Barack Obama, or the sake of other powerful black leaders, we've lost connection with those things. And the connection that we're not making goes back to the beginning of our existence here in this country, where we're not allowed to even recognize, where we've allowed ourselves to lose the identity of the things that we should be proud of, and the inventions and so forth.
Right.
We've done a lot of great things to contribute to the well-being of this country, and it's not accentuated but 1 month a year. Whereas opposed to other culture, it's accentuated year-round. But the problem we have is that we don't recognize our own accomplishments well enough. We're very quick to judge because we don't know the difference. We're very quick to say somebody didn't do something for us because we're expecting somebody to give us something. Instead of, as you pointed to earlier, Democrat, Republican, all of that aside, a human being is a human being, and the examples exist over and over again of those who make it in spite of, not because of.
Right.
And we don't recognize enough of the in spite of. I was talking to you earlier about your establishment here. This room here was established off an idea, hard work, determination. I decided to do it. Well, I guarantee you this. The same thing and ideals that you have for this organization are the same ones that Apple grew from, IBM grew from. I could name a host of them that have come out of rooms this size.
Right.
But the stick-to-itness, the desire to be something, is not identified by a color. We just don't identify as ours well enough.
Right, right. You're right, and because
That's a great point.
the three lanes that we fall into is all entertainment. Sports, TV, and music.
Yeah.
We move to a neighborhood and we're making good
Military,
money.
yeah.
The first thing they ask you is,
How did you get here?
are you a actor? Are you a musician? Or are you an athlete? And that's unfortunate. Because
I got a story on that, man. But go
because
ahead.
we grow up and thinking those are the only things we can go into when we should be in politics, we should be scientists, we should be doctors, which we are, but it's not shown enough.
Those are our largest projections. So as long as they are the largest projections, they're going to be the thing that we pursue. But you mentioned, what did you say?
Entertainment, sports,
entertainment,
TV, and music.
TV. All of those are young.
Right. Youth. Yep.
All of those aspects are young. they change. LeBron will not always be LeBron.
Right.
Lil Wayne will not always be Lil Wayne. Jay-Z will not always be Jay-Z.
Right.
As he has shown,
But
he's evolved so much.
But that is our projection.
Right.
Well, guess what? Even in their mantra, they're changing.
Right.
Now, Jay-Z is an entrepreneur.
Right.
Why not propose that first? Instead, we listen to the music, but instead we should be listening to why it's made.
Right.
Yeah, look, yeah.
Okay?
Right.
We're steadily looking at the end product as opposed to what got him there.
Right.
We're steadily copying and watching, thinking that we should have that now.
Right.
Well, when you guys started the gray area, you didn't say we should look like WTLC or Image
Right.
Broadcasting.
Right.
No.
You started with what you had.
Right.
When you started the candy store, you didn't start with a store full of candy. You started with a box.
Right.
It grew into something.
Start small and grow large.
You have to believe in it.
Right.
And if you and out of the belief will come the maturity to grow. Without maturity, none of it will work.
Right.
Wow.
So how do we get our people more mature? What is the direction? And you can chime in on this as well. What direction? Because and we hear this from the sisters a lot. I had a conversation with my lady earlier today and talking about why are men so behind and all these things. So I had to dig back into the past and get her up to speed. But sisters all over are wondering, why don't these guys get it? Women are especially black women are leading the charge on so many facets in regards to business, economics, finance, school. What is it going to take for us to get up to speed and for our men to get it together?
Well, first we need to recognize ourselves as being a commodity.
Right.
And that we are worth it.
Right.
And the problem that we have in recognizing that, without taking the leadership role, we will always be behind. Leadership is not necessarily taught the best by just observing. You have to step into some leadership roles, and you have to grow into those leadership roles. I have a son,
Right.
19, college golfer, college scholarship, HBCU. He is learning leadership. He's doing a lot of great things. He's worked in Washington D.C. this last summer. He's not a leader yet, but he's learning how to lead.
Right.
Our responsibility is almost like we have to make sure that we take care of our non-extinction, and the only way to do that is that we take care of ourselves. Love one another, look out for one another, stop hating on one another, lift each other up at whatever you're doing, and recognize that the whole is more than the sum of its parts. Sociology teaches us that first. We need to understand that the foundations of life come from one aspect in each culture of our the female is looking for security, the male is looking for vanity. Sociology teaches us that. We do all these things to assign ourselves to address each one. The woman addresses security, the male addresses vanity. It starts young. But we got to divert those attentions to recognize that the most important attention is the attention that you're paying to yourself.
Right. Because if you can't take care of yourself, who else can you take care of?
I'm not hating on tattoos, earrings, piercings, haircuts, any of those things.
Because you can still be a leader
You
with
can
that.
still do all of those things.
Right.
But make sure you understand the image that you're leading.
Right.
Because all of those things are communications. All those things are messages. A lot of times those messages are misconstrued. We understand them, but the society and the cultures to empower us do not.
Right.
But we do them anyway because somebody else did it.
Right.
Yeah.
I know.
Which is the whole follower thing, but go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I know for me, I learned leadership at a very early age, indirectly. When most people start a business, they're familiar with the term CEO, Chief Executive Officer,
for sure.
CFO, Chief Financial Officer. When I started that candy store, I was what you call the OOO. Y'all familiar with the OOO? That's the only operating officer. And so I took out the trash, I
Yeah.
answered the phones, I did inventory, I did payroll, because I was able to provide a little income for some of my friends in the community
Right.
by they hiring them to actually deliver my candy. And so that's what I love about entrepreneurship and the
Right.
beauty of it, because you
Right.
learn so many aspects of it. I've had a
Absolutely.
foundation for the last 13 years. We've trained over 10,000 young people all across
Wow.
the United States, 30 of the United States, in Barbados, Trinidad, Nigeria, really educating young people that they can be an entrepreneur at an early age. And
Right.
there's so many things that you can learn by being an entrepreneur. Realize
Right.
everybody's not going to be an entrepreneur, but if you get exposed to the tenets of entrepreneurship, the leadership aspect that you
Right.
learn, you can be successful in
concept.
any endeavor you
Right.
want to be in. Whether you want to be a doctor, a lawyer, a teacher, an
Yeah.
athletic, those things that you learn, how to manage your money, how to do a budget, customer service, those skills are transferable. And so that's why I always preach entrepreneurship. As a matter of fact, I even have a free book on my website.
Okay.
This is KennethAllen.com, where kids, even adults, can go and learn, download the book, Dare to Lead, or You're the Leader, and where you actually learn how to physically write a business plan.
Nice.
And learn how to really start your own business at an early age.
Wow.
And
That's
that
incredible.
is extremely important. Yeah.
This is
Leadership, yeah.
KennethAllen.com, y'all. Make sure y'all go to that site.
Yes, please do.
And you also speak and go. You touched on a little bit when you go to different countries and deal with certain people. And what have you found? And this is a good question. This is I'm telling myself it's a good question. What have you found is the difference in young men in our country and young men in other countries? Because we don't know what we have here, especially the young people. We don't know how easy it is to attain greatness, but we only look at, like sports, entertainment, or TV. And if we don't hit any of those, we feel like we failed. Our life is over, but kids in other countries, they come here and they become doctors, scientists. They work for NASA. They do all these different things because they don't have the same opportunity. So what different things are you seeing in other countries that the kids here are looking past?
They look at entrepreneurship as the first opportunity before they look at entertainers, the athlete. They understand that they have to be the butcher, the baker, or the candlestick maker.
Right.
And they learn that at a very early age. When I went to Africa, I was probably about 19 years old. I went to Nigeria. When I touched that soil, and first time I had an opportunity to interact with some kids who, some of them had shoes, some of them didn't, and I realized how spoiled I was, even growing up in a single parent home in poverty in Gary, Indiana, when at that time I grew up, it was the murder capital of the world. Still realized that I had more
Right.
than these kids.
Wow.
And I was like, you know what? I realized that I really didn't have it as bad as I thought. I always had a meal. I always had a roof over my head. Sometimes these kids don't even know where, if they're going to have electricity, if they're going to have running water.
Right.
And so I think it's the biggest difference that I've seen, particularly traveling outside the U.S., is that we are extremely fortunate, and we don't take advantage of all our resources. A lot of times when you talk about the kids that come over here and do extremely well, it's because they take full advantage and actually learn the system and participate and play the system's game, so they're able to be a benefit and blessing to themselves as well as to their family.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and do you think another part of your travels and seeing different races of people in Nigeria or just different countries, that these kids have a better sense of their culture and their background as opposed to the kids here? So even do you think that helps them more when they travel and they come over here?
Absolutely, absolutely. Any other country you visit, almost, and any other race for that matter, it's ingrained in them from in the womb that who you are, who you represent, what your history is. And a lot of times our kids are growing up behaving or acting the way they are in America because they really don't know the history that they came from.
Right.
Kings and queens and royalty. Too often our public school system teaches kids only from slavery to the current. They don't go back and actually teach them the real history and the real royalty of where they came from, that they're original people, that they came from greatness, and that they have that in them. And so it's ingrained in them, and so they do have a deeper appreciation for their culture and for their history.
Yeah.
because the history part is so important. And I've asked white people, I've asked black people that, like, can we as a people know where we need to go if we don't learn our history? Because every time we bring up, the past, we're always told, you know what, don't bring that back, leave it back there. So do you think that we could get where we need to go without learning our history?
No, we have to learn our history.
Right.
But not only is history important to learn, we have to be able to educate and inspire our young people that not only can you read history, but you can make history.
Right.
I've been fortunate and blessed to make history in a number of different fields, and I thank God for that. But not only is it important to really learn the history, but inspire this next generation that you can become history makers as
Right.
well
Right.
in a positive way.
Wow.
Well,
Yeah,
well,
you was gonna touch on
you make
something.
an interesting thing about history. We grew up in history class, and it was called world history. Well, then, okay, so we define world history the way they wrote it in the book. I wonder what it would look like if it said history of the world.
Wow. That's an interesting
Yeah,
perspective.
you're gonna have to break that down, Kurt.
Well, okay, so I'm able to define the book. It's world history, and I'm able to start it where I want to.
Okay.
Well, we're going to take it back to 12 or 13, 14th century, and we're going to talk about Napoleon, and we're going to talk about that type of group of
Columbus.
people. But if we go back just a little further
Yeah.
Right.
to 10,000, where our ethnic origin of people, the Moors,
Moors.
ran the world,
Scientists.
I don't think I've seen the mention of Moors, and it wasn't referenced as black ethnicity at all,
Right.
but maybe once or twice, and we talked about it in 10 minutes.
Right. Right.
Well, if the book says history of the world, and I opened it, and it opened up to the 12th century, I'm going to say, well, where's the rest of the history?
Right.
Because it didn't start on the 12th. But
Right.
that's also sliding lightly over racism.
Sure.
It's systemic, it's malignant, and it's global.
Yeah.
Right. It doesn't just not America. So it's
Okay.
all over.
And the idea is that all it's about, as we're learning, evolving to understand, it's about a fear. We have to get over these fears, and we cannot address them with ignorance.
Right.
That's proven itself over and over again. The battle cries and riots and fights we see in the streets, some of them are being fought with ignorance. They're not being fought with intelligence.
Right. Do you think that some of that
Please explain that.
is incited though? Because if there, I mean, there's been several occasions where people are marching peacefully, but then they're hit with a curfew.
Well-
Which is doesn't happen to certain groups of people.
Well, it still takes me back to the word respect.
Right.
Okay.
And no matter what you do, somebody's going to find what you do disrespectful. So, in the form of compassion and intelligence, you have to work. See, Martin Luther King in 1964 was several times considered the worst thing that could ever happen in American history. Whereas today, he is one of the greatest things that's ever happened in history. Well, you want to, my opinion, you don't want to know why that is, because he can't do anything else.
Wow, man, that's a good point. That's an excellent point.
If he was still here and he was able to address the concerns of, because he addressed the concerns of all people,
Yeah.
not just black people.
Right.
But the idea is that still, if he was here today, how would we receive him?
Right.
Whereas in 1964 and before, it was the worst thing that could have ever happened. Well, look at what that's evolved into today.
Right. But in some ways, and I hate having conversations with a certain group of people when it comes to Martin Luther King, because I feel like they use that as a scapegoat. Because a lot of the things that were happening back then are still happening today. So it almost makes you, and this is what the young kids, conversations they're having. Why are we still dealing with the things today that Martin Luther King was dealing with if he changed something?
Well, we're still dealing with the day because we haven't transitioned.
Right. But do you think, in their eye, I mean, how do you explain to a kid that that was effective if they're still dealing with those things today?
How do you, if they're still dealing with them today, then that's partially our fault not dealing with it correctly when it was our turn.
Right.
Yeah, we in many instances we've dropped the ball. You know, I had a young lady that was interning for me about a year ago, African American lady. Grew up here in Central Indiana and could not tell me what the initials for the NAACP stood for. And I said, "Wow, you know, here's this 19-year-old African American girl who can't, you know,
Doesn't know. Taken for granted.
doesn't know." And
for
so
granted.
going back to your point about how important history is, that, you know, when Martin Luther King died, the fight was still going on, and so
Right.
it was up to those that were alive to continue to fight and then pass that fight on when you get too tired to fight. It's almost like a relay. When it's your time is up, you have to be able to pass the baton to
Absolutely.
keep in order to win the
Transition.
race.
The
So,
transition.
so do y'all think that integration hurt us, in a sense?
There's no such thing as integration.
Okay.
I would expound on it, but I would prefer someone read a book, as you're referencing here, that will explain why there will never be any integration. Is not something that's going to be potentially something that we can look to and know that it happened.
Right.
The book
we
Clark-
still have a we still have
a self-identity that
right,
we have to
exactly.
identify with
so
ourselves.
whether it's segregated or not, we still have to.
It's
find
changed.
ourselves in this.
Right.
And
Yeah.
Claude Anderson, Black Labor, White Wealth, is a book that references integration, and he speaks to it pretty candidly. But the idea is that it's true. When you it's hard to establish integration equally when we're starting so far behind.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And so many, and so because it's not so much about economic growth and power as much as it's about understanding and intelligence.
Right.
And if, where we are on that spectrum, as you make reference to, Mr. Allen, you cannot. There's no way to feel like we're going to ever be on an equal footing in that area.
Right. Right.
You know, it's just so integration, as important it is to get along, it's very important for us to self-empower.
Right.
And to empower ourselves.
Yeah.
And then, because from that comes the respect. No one's tearing down Chinatowns. No one's tearing down little Italy's. Nobody's doing that because they've grown to have a respect for those communities.
Right.
People have
because
grown.
they respect them themselves.
Exactly.
Right. And we've mentioned history several times. I really single-handedly think that if America took the opportunity to engage and put more emphasis on telling people where they came from and what happened prior to slavery, that they could knock out a lot of stuff, because it's people like me who grew up, getting an education, even getting a college degree, but didn't find out half the stuff about myself until I was in my 30s. So I mean, I can't say that is America's problem.
Right.
You know, America's going to do what America's going to do. It's a capitalist.
systematic.
Right. They do what works for them. You know, but I really feel like if they want to address the African American problem, they have to start teaching us different in school when it comes to our history and origin. And not only that, black kids learn differently in education and in schools.
All origins do.
Yeah.
But the big thing is that education is only a good thing if it's reinforced.
Right.
Right.
Our kids go home from school, and whereas when I was growing up, I had to go in the house and do homework.
Right.
And before I could come outside, homework had to be done. Well, that was enforced by somebody.
Right.
Well, the problem that we have is it's not being reinforced. No matter what it appears that no matter what they're learning, it's in one ear and out the other because it's not being reinforced.
Right. Are you referring to parenting?
Oh, absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely. But we make reference to it every day and all day long that kids are raising kids.
Right.
The parents, the word parent is just by name only. It's not by the sake of what parenting is, because
Right.
the parent doesn't understand themselves.
Right. Right.
So can we control that? That's a hard one. Can we harness it? Yes, we can.
But I thank God, man, for mediums like the great media, because this
Thank
is an
you.
opportunity
man.
to
Thank you.
educate and empower our kids
Absolutely.
in a
We
different
appreciate
medium,
that.
because they're not getting it in the school system.
Absolutely.
And so this is an opportunity
Yep.
to provide them education. I tell people I'm for education, whether it's informal,
Sure.
like we have it now, or formal. But if you go to school and get a BS, and you're not doing something to help your people, that's just what it is, BS. If you go
Right.
and get you
Absolutely.
an MS and you're not doing anything to help your people, it's more the same BS.
Right.
And if you take it to the highest level you can do and get a PhD, and if you're not doing something to help your people, it's PhD, piled high and deep, more BS and MS. We've had too many conferences, too many
Absolutely.
PhDs. Now we need some PhDs.
Right. Why do you think that is? Because and this is a problem too within our community is some people surpass the level of niggerhood or whatever we want to call it, and they become successful and they don't reach back.
Absolutely.
That's a problem in itself.
It is.
Well, it is a problem, but it's almost human nature. Because these folks, Tiger Woods,
Okay.
I'm a golfer, forever and a day. A lot of folks found him to be the next hero.
Okay.
No, Tiger Woods has to be loyal to himself.
Right.
Nobody came along to give him anything. Did you help him? Did you buy him a set of golf clubs? Did you buy one of the trips? Did you sacrifice this so he could take the airplane this way? Michael Jordan, did you put him in the mind frame to think that he could be the greatest player that he turned out to be? So some people take on those empowerments. The problem is not that; it's just not enough of us. And other cultures, they've done the same things, taking care of their own families, and the name Rockefeller, that's the only thing that's important. The name Ford, that's the only name that's important. The difference is that it happens repeatedly. Over and over again, where somebody comes along and says, well, the DuPonts are not going to be like the Rockefellers. How many DuPonts do we have in this country? We're evolving and we're growing and we're changing. And out of that, hopefully, some of the same rituals and some of the same traditions that have been established in this country that are still established today will exist in our own families.
Right.
We had a Black Wall Street. We
Right.
had all those things. What happened to them? We have a funny way of finding ourselves disenfranchised.
Do you guys think that, there's been the war on drugs. There was the 80s where, the government was pumping drugs into certain communities in order to find the big guy.
Yeah, 70s and 80s. Yeah.
Which kind of set us, a lot of our parents and older generations, coming out of Chicago and a lot of the bigger cities suffered that. So there's this war on drugs, and a lot of people were incarcerated because of that. There were the three strikes that the Clintons put in place, or kept going, after Reagan or whatnot. But all these things do you feel like they had an impact that helped demature us? Because if we're saying we didn't mature, do you think that a lot of it was because of the incarceration of our people? Because we had a lot of people incarcerated, still do have a lot of people incarcerated. So.
Again, I'm going to say it again. Systemic,
Right.
malignant, global.
Right.
Those always have equal to me that somebody doesn't care.
Right.
So at the point that how do we correct it? We have to start caring. That's within ourselves.
Right.
Because we're actually asking someone else to care about what we can fix.
Right.
Yeah.
True.
How is that? That's not right. We got to fix our own.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
By taking accountability.
Right.
Right. Nobody can fix it better than myself if I'm trying to fix it.
Right.
It doesn't come with disrespecting one another. It comes with respecting each other as human beings. We don't do that all the time.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't, and ours is on display. Each time that something happens, in my culture, in my growing up watching the news, the only crime you saw on TV was the crime that we committed when
Right.
we were only committing a small fraction of all the
Absolutely.
crime.
13% of the country, but we're the most violent. I still don't get
That
that.
I mean, we've allowed people to define what our culture is.
So instead of defining for ourselves,
Exactly.
at one point in time, we had the largest congregation of black people in the country. Black Expo was the hugest. It was the largest one of its
Remember.
kind.
Absolutely.
The problem comes into play is when the heart and soul of that is gone.
One thing happened, like somebody gets shot or something, and it's blown up, and there you go.
Well, it was when in 1971 when that event started. I was 6 years old. My mother took me. It was around 4th of July. We had white pants and red and white blue shirts. Black folks, we dress up for events.
For sure.
And we went down to the thing, and all these folks there, Ralph Abernathy and Roy Wilkins, and all these folks are here, and we're learning about ourselves.
Right. Right.
Well, that event started out of the same forum as this, out of a garage on Andrew J. Brown Street,
Right.
out of a basement at a church.
Right.
So as that event grew, it still had a heart and soul. It was a grassroots, church-driven, volunteer event of our own people.
Right.
As I mentioned before, sociology tells us that the whole is more than the sum of its parts. The whole was the sum. And out of that sum, look at what happened. The heart and soul goes away because you can find folks to step into it that don't have the same mission.
Right. Absolutely.
That event now is a skeleton of what it used to be.
Right.
Unfortunately, because the heart and soul was not maintained.
Right.
You can't have a body without a heart and soul.
Right. Do you think that's happening, and it has happened over time, because as you remove and replace people and they start taking in donations and money, and now there's rules and restrictions applied to that, a huge part of me, based on today and some of the things that I'm seeing, is IBE is conforming to a Republican or conservative
Absolutely.
setup.
Absolutely.
Which doesn't have the heart and soul that it once did for the people genuinely. What are you guys' thoughts on that?
I'll let you chime in.
Well, I mean, I have a great admiration and respect for Black Expo.
For sure,
I was there
for sure,
2004 Entrepreneur of the Year. When I owned a magazine, I received that media award, and I've served in the volunteer capacity. One of the issues and challenges they face is that they don't have those grassroots or those generation. Going back to what I said about the young lady who did not know what the NAACP is.
Right.
When I was 13, 14, and 15, third weekend in July, again, Gary, Indiana, I knew I was going to be in Indianapolis. I had an outfit planned. I talked to my nieces.
Whole weekend.
I talked to my nieces and nephews and even young people today, like Black Expo, what's that? And it's our responsibility and our fault in many aspects because we haven't passed on that passion. And we haven't got engaged to make sure that the level that it was once X still maintains. I'll even take responsibility. I used to chair the youth committee. I also used to do the youth entrepreneurship seminar that a lot of people didn't know took place on Tuesday every year of Expo. We would train 75 to 100 young people on how to actually start their own business during Expo, provide them an opportunity to get seed capital to help launch those businesses.
That's important, man.
How many of you all knew that existed? I did that for 6 or 7 years doing summer celebration. Never heard about it, but if somebody got shot, you heard about that. Or that the workshops that happen prior to summer celebration, where they do have workshops for Black business owners to really get engaged and be professionals at their craft. And so I think, we have to take responsibility as a community for not getting engaged and volunteering and being at the table. Because, of course, you've heard if you're not at the table, you're on the menu.
Right. And is that part of, and you've been speaking on a lot of this about the mindset of what we are. Why are we not engaged? And we could talk about, how they're leaning more conservative, working with Pence and, gathering donations and these things. you know, and yet there's still rules and laws applied to certain things in regards to that, but it still lands on us in the community.
Right. But back to his point about the history, we haven't shared that history and how important
Right.
it is for us to get engaged. And if you don't know that history, you don't think it's relevant. You don't
Right.
think that you should get
Right.
engaged. And if you don't get engaged and don't get a history, somebody will step up to the plate.
Absolutely.
And you have to be careful who that person is stepping up to the plate to be able to provide those resources that the community once did.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the biggest problem is that and I'll touch on what I said earlier. We have allowed people to define our culture. So all these great things go on during Black Expo and Circle City Classic that they don't talk about. But as soon as you say it, when someone gets shot, they put that up there. So now other people all over the world view us in a different light.
Well, it
And
all comes
it's
down to
typically negative.
Sure, I agree. The ideas that we do at this point, we're not sharing the platform.
What do you mean by that?
Well,
Crabs in the barrel.
crabs in the barrel. We are constantly trying to be the headstone of the event.
Okay.
Instead of recognizing it takes more than one.
Right.
It's amazing to me that we are just now after the death of Martin Luther King, or the what was the spearhead of getting our Black Museum opened in Washington D.C. Jesse Helms fought that idea forever. Finally defeated. Well, why?
Right.
Well, there lies the platform for several groups to come together, and they showed they could, led by, I think, the Alpha Phi Alphas fraternity, to produce this museum. Well, for what Jesse Helms, senator from North Carolina, I do believe, felt was a bad idea, well, it's actually a good idea. You can't get in the place without a reservation.
Yep.
So, but that platform was established by many people from different origin ethnicities of people.
Right.
But the importance of integration and understanding that is where we're not. We don't share the platform well enough.
Right.
We don't transition and pass the torch well enough.
Right.
New ideas come from new young energy.
Right.
And we are solidly consistent on feeling like we have the best idea.
Right.
We want to take it to the grave. Sometimes it's time to change and transition to change the current in order to go down a different stream. And we don't do that very well.
Right. We talked about this a little bit before this, but there seems to be a huge disconnect between, the older generation, the middle generation, and then the millennials, and then, you have the kids coming after that they haven't named yet. But there's a huge disconnect. The millennials feel more entitled. Why can't I take a break? Why can't I get an award? Everybody should get an award. It's a different atmosphere. Why do you think there's such a disconnect between the older generation, the middle generation, and the millennials?
I think a lot of it has to do with some of the technology advances.
Right.
I mean, there literally is a communication gap. I am a part of an organization that has both millennials and older generation, and I'm actually the leader of that organization.
Right.
I can't communicate with my younger members the same way I communicate with my older members.
Right.
My older members, I have to physically send a letter.
Right.
If I don't physically send a letter or do a phone call, they don't consider
Right.
have been communicated with. My
Right.
younger members, they're not going to read the letter, so I
Right.
have to send them a text
Text message,
message,
right.
or I have to post it on social media.
Right.
And so a lot of times a disconnect comes even just with the advancements in technology. They
Right.
just don't even communicate the same. Older generations typically still have a home phone number, still actually physically use the home phone
True.
to communicate with relatives and loved ones. Young people don't even have home phones. Some of them don't even know what a home phone
Right.
is.
Right.
Because all they know is cell phones. All they know is to be able to interact via text message, via social media. And so a lot of it happens because the way they communicate is totally different. So they have a hard time really having an opportunity or a medium or having substantive conversation because the way they communicate is totally different.
That's true.
Yeah, and see,
I would agree.
and see, I think a big problem is that, one thing that a leader should do is make adjustments in that. Learning how to communicate to their, to the people that they're trying to reach
Well,
and lead.
you got to still keep in mind that there are people that still don't have a microwave. There are people that still don't use a lot of different mediums.
Right.
And along with the changes in medium of communication, comes the influx of young people and older people alike that don't quite understand that those bridges are different for us than they are for others. The 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 I think as big a component of why these transitions are hard on us is because of the influx of the international communities that are here in America now. They are a large part of that influence, and unfortunately, it appears that we are left behind.
Right.
It appears, not that we are,
Right.
but it appears that we are.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
There is a difference.
Sure.
What we don't do is allow ourselves to be shown as exposing everyone to what we know.
Do you think, and I'm sure, as the years go on, my generation will start to get unfamiliar with new technology and, the cycle continues.
Absolutely.
Is it our obligation to try and stay engaged in these things in order to stay connected to the youth? Like you mentioned that, why that gap is so big because of technology, but shouldn't we obligate ourselves to learn these new things and to stay up on top of them in order to maintain that? Because we're talking two different languages. We're talking a technology language, and the older generation is talking a pen and paper. If it's not wrote down, I don't understand. That kind of thing. So
part of it is so fast.
It changes so
It's
many.
changing so
Right.
often, so you become disenfranchised. You become disenchanted about it because what you were able to do yesterday, you can't do tomorrow.
Right.
And that as you get older, patience wears thin.
Right.
See, wisdom is a strange thing. You get upset at the notion of something that you didn't get upset with 20 years ago because you become wiser.
Right.
And you're unwilling to accept that somebody doesn't understand that something that you do in a certain form.
Right.
As an older person, you become disenfranchised because you know it worked in a previous form. You hear it all the time. Young people, older folks say, "Man, I remember when Twinkies was 29 cents." Well, they're not
Right.
29 cents anymore.
Right. Right.
They're, so when we're talking about change, sometimes we feel like I don't have to be part of it. I can
Right.
still exist
Right.
without the change and the integration. That's not for me. Is the mindset. Part of the wisdom is a problem because you just feel like you don't need it. You don't have to do it.
Right.
It
It doesn't do anything for your life, your existing situation.
I even down to music. We're listening to the music that made us feel good in a time.
Right.
I have a hard time adjusting to hip hop.
Right. Right.
But for my son, hip hop is going to take him till he's 75.
Right.
Whatever's coming in behind him, he's not going to be interested in.
Right. Right.
Same thing with technology and everything else. As it's changing, it's only going to entertain a certain part of the audience.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So the problem with us in powers and numbers is that our numbers are too small. We don't adjust because there's not enough of us doing it.
Right.
There's not enough of us saying, okay, well, this group, enough of us are working on this over here that everybody should understand it.
Right.
Doesn't work like
You know what's interesting, and I always think about this, like we are only 13% of America, as a people. And with that number being so low as a people, why is it so hard for us to get it together? You know what I'm saying? It's like if we had the 90 or the 87%, and we said we have a goal to reach all these people, and we got to change we only got 13%. And we're struggling.
Our populations are centralized.
Okay.
You won't find we are in most major cities in America.
Right.
We're not in Dubuque, Iowa.
Right. Right.
We're not in Montana.
We're not farming and
We're not in
those
Montana.
places.
We're
Right.
not in Idaho. We're not in Seattle. And in those places where we are, our influence is minimalized. Whereas whatever it's too decentralized. if we bring those powers together, as I say, share the platform,
Right.
and nobody's better than the next, and respect each other's opinions, we have a better chance of growth. But
Right.
until we do that, as simple as Kobe's going to be over here, and Allen Iverson's going to be over there,
Right.
and Houston's going to be over here, and Cleveland's going to be over there.
Right.
And these guys are going to compete for who's making the most instead of coming together and figure out what we can do
Absolutely.
together.
Right.
Collectively, yeah.
Right. Absolutely.
Okay. The exposure of our people, of the accentuating of the leadership. Merck has a black CEO.
Yeah.
Xerox had a black CEO, female.
Right.
Aerial Capital.
Never knew that.
Yes, Ariel Capital. Melody Hobson is one of the leading financiers in this country, married to George Lucas, who's talking about that along with LeBron and what they put in projecting to us. We've got to change the prism to something that says it's going to be long lasting and has a chance to grow, because what we see on TV is for sale. That's not.
Right. Wow. It's incredible. What are your thoughts on that, man?
A couple of things I want to touch on. One is that, because of mediums like this,
Yeah.
we have an opportunity to change the paradigm,
Absolutely.
to change the shift, because you all have an opportunity to really control the conversation. I used to own a magazine called Prominent Magazine with Dr. Farr Gray. He wrote the book Millionaire: 9 Steps to Being Rich from the Inside Out, along with Bill Mays, who owned Mays Chemical here in the city. And the reason we started the magazine, because at that time Bill Mays owned Indianapolis Recorder, Indiana Minority Business Magazine. He said, when you have media, you have the ability to say whatever you want when you want to say it, and you have the ability to reach the masses. So it's so important that we send out a message that's positive and that we have a venue. Because we can't count on mainstream media. We can't count on the public school system to do it. We can't count on even the griots, because there's such a disconnect. The folks that have the wisdom don't know how to communicate it into a medium that the next generation will be able to understand and comprehend it.
Wow, and that's to touch on that, that's in a nutshell why we created this platform.
Yeah, because we looked at the numbers in regards to TV, radio, broadcast. We could have took any of those channels, but we said, man, well, everybody's on social media.
Yep.
Nobody. I mean, if you're watching, I mean, everything is so oversaturated when it comes to TV, radio. You hear more advertisement than you do music on the radio.
Well, that's where the money is.
Right. So if unless you don't have any other medium, a phone or anything, then you're listening to the radio. But who are you capturing?
Right.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? Now, I'm not saying that radio isn't effective, because a lot of people still use that. But to me, for us to reach everybody, this was the only facet to go. So, and it took us a while, because we had to figure out how can we stream to social media, without making it look janky.
Right.
How do we make it look professional?
Right.
We struggled with that for a couple
But
of
y'all
months,
did it,
but we
man.
figured it out.
Appreciate
We
that, yeah.
figured it out,
Yeah,
and we're continuing to use that. And we're coming up with some great things in 2018 just for the people. Again, we don't make any money doing this. This was all voluntary. And because we used to sit in the room and have conversations smaller than this, we said, man, people need to hear this stuff.
Yeah.
We said we used to sit for hours just talking about, man, what about this and what about this? And it's unfortunate that, there is no other medium for that.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah, and there are, other platforms, but and
Besides Amos or
yeah.
Amos Brown, but
but like what we wanted to do was it just show us in a different light.
Yeah.
And just show that, there's bigger things than us getting shot and
great
us,
people out here.
Yeah, I mean, like what you got, what you're doing.
All day.
We didn't know. Okay, so you informed us and the viewers and hopefully, the word will get out. So people can reach out to you, but it's to basically just, show us in a better light, instead of, all this negative, like the a negative narrative, man, that's out there.
Yeah.
You know what's also crazy is that media, like, if you see now, all the news stations are on social media. So
Right.
so they're
Competitive.
transforming
It's competitive.
and
Yeah.
keeping up with
Sure.
technology.
They have to.
They,
have
you know, and they have to. So we
they
got to
have the
be
capital.
stronger. We got to
Remain
be
vigilant.
just as vocal and just as innovative because we're still behind. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is one platform, but we always tell people, look, if you want to learn how to do this, call us.
Yeah, man,
Yeah.
college.
We need 100 more of these.
We didn't go to school for this.
Yeah, we didn't go to school for this, so,
You know,
but
it's
we
something
need
that we're
100
passionate
more
about.
of these so that we can
Yeah.
have more conversation. When we're not on air, we'd rather hit somebody else be on air talking about some other stuff.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? This can't be the only conversation.
Right.
You know, our goal is to how many people can we reach every year? We don't care. People have came to us and said how much money y'all want. We don't care about that. We care about reaching as many people as we
can.
possibly
To make a
can.
positive difference.
This is our way of giving back.
Absolutely. And conversation is so important. And we got to have mediums like this. I'm excited too about the conference because at the end of the day, it is a conversation.
Right.
But it's a solution oriented conversation. And so, anybody that's
Absolutely.
listening, we want to make sure that you are there October the 10th at the Indiana Government Center, 302 West Washington. Brother Nuri Muhammad is going to bring the fire as he brought on the show when he was on the show.
Every single time.
I tuned in that day.
Yeah, man. Shout out to brother Nuri Muhammad.
Absolutely, absolutely. We are all truly excited about him, but really being able to have that conversation so that we can come up with the next generation of solutions and ideas that's really going to change our condition. Because if a change is going to happen, it's going to be by people like us that look like us.
Absolutely.
Coming to the game, coming to the table, having those real talk, real discussions to be able to make a difference and make an impact.
We're here to tell you, man, if you
come
guys can
anytime,
use us as at any facet or whatever,
Absolutely.
let us know. Because,
Absolutely.
I mean, this is what we're here for. It's only a couple of us, but in our capacity, but we're going to try and do everything we can to get the word out about this and be involved or be a part of it because this is it.
Yeah.
You know, at the end of the day, this is I'm not saying that this is the only medium, but this, you know,
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna make an executive decision to say that the gray area media is gonna be there to be able to stream it, man.
Absolutely.
We're gonna give y'all the first scoop on it, man, so y'all can be
Absolutely.
there and make
Okay.
sure that it's received
October
well,
the
man.
9th and the 10th.
Yep.
Yeah,
October
yeah.
the 10th is the conference piece.
Okay.
The 9th is a reception, but the 10th
Okay.
is the actual
The
conference.
10th is the actual.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Peace.
There it is. I mean, and that's all we want to do, man.
Yeah,
Like I
man.
said, is be a part of things and let people know that hey, this is what's happening over here. Because you got to buy this on Fox News. You know, you got to buy this spot.
Absolutely.
You got to buy the advertisement on the website that people may not see. I mean, you got to the radio. I may be listening for 1 minute, but I may not
Switch
even hear
over.
that.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? So we're offering another solution to let people know that look, we're here to stay.
Yeah.
And we're here to use us as a vessel because this is what it's for. We're here for we always say that we are your voice.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I mean, we appreciate y'all coming through.
Yeah, man, absolutely.
And we're definitely going to have these conversations again. It is necessary.
Absolutely.
We learn so much, man. Man, I'm just
Yeah.
your introduction and telling like the first minute of you speaking, I'm just like,
What is this? Yeah, I'm like, well, what is
I
this?
didn't know
Yeah.
nothing about this, you know. And it's
it's here
just
for you.
refreshing. Yeah, it's refreshing to know that there are advocates and people out there fighting for that very thing. You know, we sit here and have conversations about everything, but to be sitting with someone who's directly involved in the reporting and helping initiate those things out in the community.
I'm a servant, man. I'm blessed to have been the
That's big.
youngest chair ever elected for the commission since it was started. So I'm
Wow.
just excited just about the opportunity to serve, man. We're here for the people. Anything that the commission can do, please let us know. Reach out to us on social media or by contacting our executive director, James Garrett.
There it is.
Appreciate it.
What we like to do is closing remarks, man. You know, you did some of that just now, but just leave people with your ending
Positive
solution,
words,
positive
yeah.
words or whatnot, and then let them know how they can reach you if that's available. We'll start with you, Kirk.
There is one major word I've always used in bringing our community together. It's called cohesion. And the cohesion is the glue. When I was growing up, the cohesiveness of my neighborhood grew from a neighborhood to a community, from a community to a city, from a city to a nationwide opportunity to understand that we are people too. That cohesion must return for us to empower ourselves. We do not, or at this point, seem to have that direction that says we are trying to solidly become that community again. It starts from one neighbor to the next. Parents watching other kids do wrong and correcting it. It does make a reference to it takes a village. It does take a village, but it doesn't start with a village. It starts with just one person trying to do the right thing.
Wow.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's big. Kenneth.
I leave folks with this. We got to make sure that we're teaching this next generation to be great. And I like to look at great as an acronym.
Okay.
G meaning God and goals. You got to have God in your life. That's my personal belief. You have a goal. If you woke up without a goal, go back to sleep. R, reading and relationships. You know, I was able to come on the show because of a relationship.
Absolutely.
Reading is so fundamental. I know this brother Kurt Reed is an avid reader. That's so important to be able to educate yourself. E, eating and exercising, because you can't take care of yourself and you can't take care of your people if you're not eating and eating the right foods and exercising on a daily basis. A, attitude. My childhood pastor, bless his soul, the Reverend Dr. F. Brandon Jackson, was notorious for saying your attitude determines your altitude. So how you feel, how you believe is how far you can go in life. And then last letter is T, time. Bill Gates, Michael Jordan, Kobe LeBron, Kenneth Allen, Kurt, Ray, we all only get 24 hours in a day. You either use them or lose them. And so that's how you be great. If you want to follow up with me, I'm on social media, Kenneth Businessman Allen on Facebook, on Instagram, ICSSBM Chairman, Snapchat, same thing, and on Twitter, Kenneth Biz Allen. Of course, you can follow the commission on Twitter as well, ICSSBM. So I appreciate this opportunity to be able to come share. We hope that your listeners will be there on October the 10th. If they can't come in person, be a sponsor. Make sure you're in the place. Spread the word. October the 10th at the Indiana Government Center, the Dare to Lead Black Male Statewide Conference.
Absolutely.
Thank you, man, for coming.
Big time.
I want to thank y'all, man, for coming.
You're welcome.
Elder Kurt, I'll start calling you, man, Elder Kurt over there, man, with all those words of wisdom. Appreciate you, man, for coming. Kenneth, man, thank you.
Thank you.
Keep doing what you're doing, man. I mean, you've educated us and informed us, man, of something that we had no clue about at all.
Yeah.
But that brings us, that brings me to this point. I mean, that's one reason why I'm thankful that me and my brother over here created this platform for reasons like that.
Absolutely.
Not only to enlighten us, but our viewers too, which we also thank you for tuning in. We are all connected. I say it every ending, but I mean, I can never say that enough. We do. I mean, we have to educate our youth, ourselves, to be confident, to just go out, man, and try to start businesses. And just get around like-minded people. Be humble if you don't know something and you're trying to improve in certain areas of your life. Get with people that are strong in those areas and just learn, and then take what you've learned and then grow from that and build something. And for anyone that does not know what NAACP means, it means National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. Yeah. Okay? I mean, everyone should know what that means, but, I just want to put that, out there. But thank you guys, man, for coming. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. And I want to second that, man, what Pat's saying, man, because this is just always enlightening for me. Instead of sitting at home watching CNN or Fox News or seeing what they feel is irrelevant, we get to sit in here and have discussions around what we feel is relevant. And important for the advancement of colored people. And not only colored people, in hopes that other people of other races are watching and trying to understand us. And they won't be able to do that unless they listen in on discussions like this and be proactive. And we have people all around us that I mean, I got a guy that used to attack me on social media in regards to his beliefs, and after watching our shows, he's a changed man.
Wow.
He now understands the things that we go through and understands a lot of those things, and his whole tone has changed in regards to how he deals with his life and addresses people. And that is the hopes that we get. We're not asking for a handout. We're not asking for anybody to hand us anything. We're saying acknowledge the fact that we went through some things.
Absolutely.
And now we're looking for solutions and creating solutions and trying to get there. Don't get mad at black folk for having a black folk conference or a black folk this and that. This is how we progress. This is how we and get our people to understand that this conference is for you. Come learn something.
Yeah.
You know, it's not to say that that's the only conference that matters. We're saying, look, this is here for you. If we don't call it black, then it's just a conference.
Right.
And you know what, Ray? Here, I'm sorry. I want to touch on something really, really quick. I'm all for causes if it's constructive.
Absolutely.
Period.
Yep.
I mean, I'm all for any cause if it is constructive. If it's going to build people, doesn't matter their color, their background, nationality,
Absolutely.
whatever.
Absolutely.
If it is constructive, I'm all for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I second that. And so we thank y'all for tuning in. We thank y'all for being a part of our shows and just consistently loving on us. We thank you for that, because without you guys sharing our feeds and being a part of our conversations, we can't do anything. So thank you for being a part of that. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming here. We got to get you back on. I definitely want to follow up on some things, man. We have to do maybe like every 2 to 3 months or something, because what you do is important, and we have to be able to understand what are the things that are coming up in these statistics and reports that we need to start talking about.
Right.
You know, if we can get an idea of what the conversation is surrounding what's happening in politics or legislation, then we can maybe build some mediums and some topics around how we can address that from our perspective. So that's why it's all important, man. So thank y'all for tuning in, and please share this feed if you haven't already. We'll get with you guys next week. Thank you.
Thank you. Peace.
Thank you.
Nice.
Welcome to the Gray Area. The Gray Area Media. We've obligated ourselves to be the voice for all communities, speaking on topics that include community, religion, education, politics, technology, sports, health, and wellness. The Gray Area Media is a platform created by longtime friends for the sole purpose of providing our communities with the ability to voice current, past, and modern-day issues. The Gray Area, in its naming significance, solely speaks to the area in which people shy away from speaking because of media-based constraints or contractual-based obligations. Well, I'm here to tell you, we don't do that here. So please, stay tuned in. We're going to go live in a few minutes. Don't forget, please add us as a friend on Facebook so that you can follow our live feed. And not only that, please add us on Twitter and Instagram at The Gray Area Media. Please visit our website at www.thegrayareamedialive.com. Thank you.